The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor of the Plaza Hotel, silencing the room instantly. 200 of New York's elite froze, their eyes darting between the trembling woman in the thrifted gown and the sneering heiress pointing a manicured finger in her face. "Security!" the heiress hissed, her voice dripping with mock pity. "Please remove this trash before she contaminates the air for the rest of us." Tears welled in Layla's eyes as she looked for an exit, believing her life was over. She didn't see the man standing in the shadows behind her, her quiet, unassuming husband, unbuttoning his jacket to reveal a terrifying resolve. They thought they were crushing a nobody. They had no idea they had just declared war on the owner of the very ground they stood on. The invitation had sat on the kitchen counter for 3 weeks, a heavy square of cream cardstock embossed with gold leaf that seemed to mock the chipped laminate surface beneath it. It was an invitation to the St. Jude's Winter Gala, the most exclusive philanthropic event of the Manhattan social calendar. For Layla, it wasn't just a party, it was a battlefield. Layla adjusted the strap of her handbag, staring at her reflection in the hallway mirror of their modest 2-bedroom apartment in Queens. The dress she wore was a deep emerald green, purchased second-hand from a consignment shop in Brooklyn. She had spent 4 nights tailoring it herself, pricking her fingers until they bled to take in the waist and repair a tear in the hem. To the untrained eye, she looked elegant. To the sharks she worked with at Obsidian Marketing, she knew she would look like a desperate pretender. "You're overthinking it," a deep, calm voice came from the living room. Layla turned to see Roman leaning against the doorframe. Her husband was a man of few words and even fewer expressions. He wore a simple black suit that fit him well, though it lacked the flashy labels her colleagues obsessed over. To everyone in Layla's world, Roman was a freelance consultant, a vague title that usually elicited polite nods and immediate subject changes. They assumed he was unemployed or struggling. They assumed Layla was the breadwinner, dragging dead weight. "I'm not overthinking it, Roman," Layla sighed, smoothing the fabric of her dress nervously. "Beatrice will be there, and Grant. They've been waiting for a moment like this. If I look out of place even for a second, they'll tear me apart. I need this promotion, Roman. I need them to see me as one of them." Roman walked over, his movements slow and deliberate. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip warm and grounding. "You are not one of them, Layla," he said softly. "You are better. You earned your place at that table. They inherited theirs." Layla offered a weak smile. She loved Roman. He was her rock, her safe harbor in a city that constantly tried to drown her. But sometimes she wished he understood the politics of her world. In the high-stakes environment of luxury marketing, perception was reality. If you didn't look like you owned the building, you were assumed to be the janitor. "I know you believe that," she whispered. "But Beatrice, she's relentless. Last week she made a joke about my shoes in front of the CEO. Everyone laughed, even the interns." Roman's eyes darkened slightly, a flicker of something cold passing through them, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Beatrice focuses on shoes because she has nothing else to offer. Tonight, focus on your work. Focus on the connections you need to make. Let me worry about the rest." "You?" Layla let out a short, anxious laugh. "Roman, please promise me you won't cause a scene. These people, they aren't like the neighbors. They can destroy careers with a phone call." "I promise I won't do anything they don't deserve," Roman said enigmatically. He checked his watch, a vintage piece with a leather strap, understated and worn. "The car is here." "Car?" Layla frowned. "I thought we were taking an Uber." "A friend owed me a favor," Roman said simply, guiding her toward the door. When they stepped out onto the curb, it wasn't a standard Uber waiting for them. It was a pristine black Lincoln Continental. It wasn't the flashy stretch limousines the nouveau riche preferred, but a vehicle of understated power and security. The driver, a man with a thick neck and military posture, stepped out and opened the door for Layla without a word. "Who is your friend?" Layla whispered as she slid onto the leather seat, the smell of expensive conditioner filling her senses. "Just someone from the old days," Roman replied, settling in beside her. As the car pulled away into the rainy New York night, Layla watched the city blur past. She felt a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. She was stepping into the lion's den, armed only with a thrifted dress and a husband nobody respected. She didn't notice that the driver made eye contact with Roman in the rearview mirror, offering a subtle, respectful nod, the kind of nod one gives not to a friend, but to a commander. Roman didn't nod back. He simply stared out the window at the skyline, his expression unreadable. He was returning to a world he had walked away from 5 years ago, a world that remembered the name Roman Kincaid very differently than his wife did. The Pierre Hotel on Fifth Avenue was a fortress of light against the gloom of the winter evening. Photographers swarmed the entrance, their flashbulbs creating a stroboscopic nightmare for anyone not used to the attention. Luxury sedans and limousines idled in a long queue, depositing women in couture gowns and men in tuxedos that cost more than Layla's annual rent. When the Lincoln pulled up, Layla hesitated. "Maybe we should have dropped off around the corner," she murmured, clutching her clutch so hard her knuckles turned white. "Head up," Roman said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming a command rather than a suggestion. "You belong here." The driver opened the door, and Roman stepped out first. He extended a hand to Layla. As she emerged, a few photographers snapped pictures instinctively, then lowered their cameras, realizing they didn't recognize her. The disinterest was almost more painful than hostility. It confirmed her fear. She was a nobody. They ascended the grand staircase toward the ballroom. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume. Chanel No. 5, Baccarat Rouge, and the crisp scent of old money. Inside the ballroom, the noise was a dull roar of polite conversation and clinking crystal. Layla scanned the room, her heart hammering against her ribs. She spotted her boss, Mr. Henderson, talking to a group of investors near the ice sculpture. And then she saw them. Beatrice arrived holding court near the center of the room. She was wearing a custom Versace gown, a shimmering column of silver that looked like liquid mercury. Beside her was Grant, her fiancé and a VP at a rival firm, looking smug in a velvet tuxedo jacket. They were surrounded by a sycophantic circle of junior executives and social climbers. Layla tried to steer Roman toward the bar, hoping to get a drink before facing the firing squad. But Beatrice's radar was impeccable. Her head snapped toward them, and a slow, predatory smile spread across her face. "Well, well," Beatrice's voice cut through the ambient noise, loud enough to turn heads. "If it isn't Cinderella, I didn't realize the charity extended to letting the staff attend." The circle around her tittered with laughter. Layla froze, her face heating up. Roman stopped, his hand resting gently on the small of Layla's back. "Good evening, Beatrice," Layla managed to say, her voice shaking slightly. "You look lovely." "And you look—" Beatrice looked Layla up and down, her eyes lingering on the hem of the emerald dress. "Resourceful. Is that the same dress you wore to the office Christmas party 3 years ago? Or did you just find something similar in a dumpster?" Grant chuckled, sipping his scotch. "Easy, B. Maybe times are tough. I heard Obsidian is cutting bonuses this year. Though looking at—" He glanced at Roman with a sneer. "You're +1. I assume times have been tough for a while." Roman looked at Grant. He didn't blink. He didn't look angry. He looked at Grant the way a scientist looks at a bacteria sample. "Do I know you?" Roman asked calmly. Grant laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Do you know me?" "Pal, I'm Grant Sterling. My father built the Sterling Tower. I don't expect a freelancer to know the key players, but try to keep up." "Sterling," Roman repeated, testing the name on his tongue. "Right. The construction firm that cut corners on the Hudson project. I read about the lawsuits." The silence that followed was absolute. Grant's face turned a violent shade of red. The Hudson project was a massive scandal that the Sterling family had spent millions trying to bury. Nobody mentioned it in polite society. "Excuse me?" Grant stepped forward, invading Roman's personal space. "What did you just say to me, you little nobody?" Layla panicked. She grabbed Roman's arm. "Grant, he didn't mean it. He doesn't follow the news closely. Roman, let's go get a drink." "No," Beatrice interjected, stepping in to defend her fiancé. Her eyes narrowed into slits. "He doesn't get to walk away. You bring this peasant into our gala, and he insults my fiancé. You really have no class, Layla. It's embarrassing. Honestly, I don't know why Henderson keeps you around. You're a stain on the company image." "That's enough," Layla said, finding a spark of courage. "We're here to support the hospital, Beatrice, not to fight. We are here to support the hospital, Beatrice corrected. You are here to drink the free champagne and pretend you matter. Look at him, Layla. She gestured theatrically at Roman. His suit is off the rack. His shoes are scuffed. He probably drove you here in a taxi. Do you really think he belongs in the same room as billionaires? Roman smiled. It was a terrifyingly calm smile. You judge a man by his suit, Beatrice. That's a dangerous mistake to make in this city. I judge a man by his worth, Beatrice spat. And you? You're worth nothing. If you had any dignity, you'd leave before security realizes you probably forged your invitation. We were invited, Layla insisted, her voice trembling. By mistake, surely, Grant sneered. He turned to a passing waiter. Boy, get me the floor manager. We have a situation here. Layla's blood ran cold. The floor manager of the Pierre was notorious for being ruthless about guest lists and decorum. If they were escorted out, the story would be all over the office by Monday morning. Her career would be over. Grant, please, Layla pleaded, hating herself for begging. Don't do this. It's too late, Grant said, crossing his arms. You wanted to play with the big dogs, Layla. Now you're going to get bitten. Roman didn't move. He simply watched the waiter hurry away to fetch the manager. He leaned in close to Layla's ear. Do you trust me? Roman, they're going to kick us out, she whispered, tears threatening to spill. This is a disaster. Do you trust me? He repeated, his voice steady as a heartbeat. Layla looked up into his grey eyes. There was no fear there, only a strange, icy calm. Yes, she whispered, I trust you. Good, Roman said, turning back to face Grant and Beatrice, because the show is just beginning. At that moment the crowd parted. A tall, impeccably dressed man with silver hair approached. It was Henri, the legendary general manager of the Pierre. He looked serious, his eyes scanning the group until they landed on Grant. Mr. Sterling, Henri said, his accent thick and French, is there a problem? Yes, Henri, Grant said, pointing a finger at Roman's chest. This man is harassing my fiancée and making a scene. I don't believe he belongs here. I want him removed immediately. Beatrice smirked, crossing her arms in triumph. She watched Layla, waiting for the tears, waiting for the breakdown. Henri turned slowly to look at Roman. Layla held her breath, preparing for the humiliation. She expected Henri to snap his fingers for security. She expected to be grabbed by the arm and hauled out the back exit. Instead, Henri's face went pale. His eyes widened, and the professional mask he wore slipped entirely. He didn't look at Roman with disdain. He looked at him with absolute, unadulterated terror. Henri bowed, deeply. Mr. Valerius, Henri stammered, using a name Layla had never heard before. I did not know you were attending tonight. We were not informed. Please forgive the lack of preparation. The silence in the circle was deafening. Grant's smirk froze. Beatrice looked from Henri to Roman, confusion warring with her arrogance. Valerius, Grant laughed nervously. Henri, what are you doing? This is Layla's husband. He's a nobody. His name is Roman. Henri straightened up, his face hard as stone as he looked at Grant. Mr. Sterling, you will show respect. You are speaking to the man who owns the holding company that acquired this hotel 3 days ago. Layla's head snapped toward her husband. Roman didn't look at her. He was looking at Grant, and for the first time, he let the coldness in his eyes freeze the air around them. Actually, Henri, Roman said, his voice smooth and dangerous. He's right. My name is Roman. But he's wrong about the rest. He took a step toward Grant, who instinctively took a step back. I don't just own the hotel, Grant. I own the bank that holds the debt on your father's company. The silence that had fallen over the group rippled outward, infecting the nearby circles until a hush descended over the entire ballroom corner. The ice sculpture, a magnificent swan dripping slowly onto a bed of oysters, seemed to be the only thing moving. Grant's face had gone from flushed to an ashen grey. He looked at Henri, then at Roman, his mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from water. You're lying, Grant whispered, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. This is a joke, a sick joke. He's a nobody. He lives in a shoebox apartment in Queens. Henri, the general manager, did not look amused. He signaled to 2 security guards who had been hovering near the perimeter. They stepped closer, their presence looming and heavy. Mr. Valerius does not make jokes about ownership, Mr. Sterling, and I do not make jokes about my employer. Beatrice, sensing the shifting tides, tried to laugh, a brittle, high-pitched sound that grated on the ears. Oh, Grant, don't be silly. Maybe he won the lottery. Is that it, Roman? Did you scratch off a lucky ticket and decide to buy a suit? She turned to the crowd, desperate to regain control of the narrative. It's charming, really. New money is always so theatrical. Roman finally released Layla's waist, stepping fully into the light. He adjusted his cuffs, a gesture so casual yet so authoritative that it made Grant flinch. New money? Roman repeated, his voice carrying easily without shouting. Beatrice, my family was financing railroads while your grandfather was still trying to figure out which fork to use for salad. But that's irrelevant. What is relevant is the portfolio I reviewed this morning. He pulled a smartphone from his pocket. Not a cracked model, but a sleek, custom device Layla had never seen him use before. He tapped the screen twice and held it up. Grant, your father's construction firm, Sterling & Sons, has been leveraging debt to cover the losses from the Hudson lawsuit. You're currently overextended by $40 million. The primary creditor was City National. Was. Grant's eyes bulged. Was? I bought the debt at 9 a.m. this morning, Roman said, sliding the phone back into his pocket, which means I can call it in whenever I choose. And considering the way you just spoke to my wife, I'm feeling rather impatient. The color drained from Beatrice's face. She dropped Grant's arm as if he were suddenly radioactive. She knew what this meant. If the debt was called, Sterling & Sons would collapse overnight. The bankruptcy would be absolute. The penthouses, the Hamptons estate, the custom Versace gowns, it would all be seized. Roman, Beatrice stammered, her voice trembling. Roman, wait. It was banter. You know how it is at these events. We were just having fun. She turned to Layla, her eyes wide with panic. Layla, honey, you know me. I'm just loud. I didn't mean anything by it. We're colleagues, friends. Layla looked at the woman who had tormented her for 3 years. She looked at the woman who had made fun of her lunch, her clothes, and her work ethic. She saw the fear in Beatrice's eyes, and for the first time she realized how small Beatrice really was. Friends, Layla asked quietly. Friends don't try to get their friends fired, Beatrice. Friends don't mock people for being poor. I can fix this, Beatrice pleaded, reaching out to touch Layla's arm. I'll talk to Henderson. I'll make sure you get the promotion. I promise. Just tell him to stop. Layla stepped back, avoiding Beatrice's touch. She looked at Roman. Do what you need to do. Roman nodded. He turned to Henry. Henry, please escort Mr. Sterling and his guest out. They are trespassing. With pleasure, sir, Henry said. He snapped his fingers. The security guards moved in instantly, flanking Grant and Beatrice. You can't do this, Grant shouted as a heavy hand landed on his shoulder. Do you know who I am? I'm a VIP. You're a liability, Roman said coldly, and now you're leaving. As the guards began to drag them away, Grant struggled, knocking into a waiter carrying a tray of champagne. Glasses crashed to the floor, shattering loudly. The entire ballroom turned to look. Beatrice was sobbing now, her mascara running down her face, her dignity left in a puddle on the floor. Layla! Layla, please! Beatrice shrieked as they were hauled toward the exit, passing the stunned onlookers who parted like the Red Sea. Layla watched them go, her heart pounding in her throat. She felt a strange mixture of vindication and shock. The room was silent, hundreds of eyes now fixed on her and Roman. The same people who had ignored her 10 minutes ago were now staring at her with a mix of awe and fear. Mr. Henderson, her boss, emerged from the crowd. He looked terrified. He walked up to Layla, his hands shaking slightly. Layla, he said, his voice cracking, I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me? Your husband, Mr. Valerius. Because it shouldn't matter, Layla said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. My work should speak for itself, Mr. Henderson. Of course it does. Henderson nodded vigorously. In fact, I was just telling the board, the senior director position. It's yours, obviously. We'll draw up the paperwork on Monday. Roman stepped in, placing a protective arm around Layla. She'll think about it, he said to Henderson. Right now, my wife and I would like some privacy. Yes, certainly. Take the VIP lounge. Take the penthouse. Henderson stammered, bowing out of their way. Roman guided Layla through the crowd. People stepped back, bowing their heads, whispering, "Who is he? Did you hear? That's the Kincaid heir. I thought he was dead. I thought he was in Europe." Layla heard the snippets of gossip, her mind spinning. Kincaid? Valerius? She looked at the man she had woken up next to every day for 2 years, the man who made her coffee, who fixed the leaky sink, who clipped coupons with her on Sundays. "Roman," she whispered as they reached the elevators. "Who are you?" He pressed the button for the penthouse floor, the doors sliding shut and cutting off the noise of the party. The silence in the elevator was heavy. "I'm your husband," he said softly, turning to face her. "I'm the man who loves you." "That's not enough anymore," Layla said, tears stinging her eyes. "You just bought a $40 million debt like it was a pack of gum. You own this hotel. You lied to me for 2 years. The elevator dinged, opening directly into a sprawling penthouse suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Roman walked in, loosening his tie. He looked tired now, the armor of the ruthless billionaire slipping slightly. "I didn't lie, Layla," he said, walking to the wet bar and pouring a glass of water. "I omitted. There is a difference." "Not to me," Layla cried, her voice echoing in the massive room. "I thought we were building a life together, a life we scraped for. When the car broke down last month, we took the bus for 2 weeks because we couldn't afford the repairs. Was that a lie? Were you laughing at me the whole time?" Roman set the glass down hard. "Never," he said fiercely. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, taking her face in his hands. "I have never laughed at you. I have only ever admired you." "Then explain," Layla demanded, pulling away. "Explain why Roman Kincaid, apparently a billionaire, is living in a rent-controlled apartment in Queens with a marketing assistant." Roman sighed, running a hand through his hair. He walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "Sit down, Layla," he said quietly. "It's a long story." Layla sat on the edge of a velvet sofa that probably cost more than her college tuition. She watched Roman's silhouette against the city lights. He looked like a stranger, yet his posture, the slight slump of his shoulders, was the same man she knew. "My full name is Roman Valerius Kincaid," he began, not turning around. "My grandfather founded Kincaid Global, shipping, banking, real estate. I was born into it, groomed for it since I could walk. By the time I was 25, I was running a division worth billions." He turned to look at her. "It was miserable, Layla. Everyone I met wanted something. The women wanted the name. The men wanted the power. My friends were spies for business rivals. My family was a shark tank. When my father died 5 years ago, the fighting over the estate was so vicious. It broke me." He walked over and sat on the coffee table in front of her, so he was looking up into her eyes. "I realized I didn't know if anyone actually liked me. Just Roman. Not the CEO, not the heir, just the man. So I left. I hired a proxy to manage the trust. I signed over day-to-day operations to the board, and I disappeared. I took the middle name I never used, moved to a neighborhood where nobody knew the Kincaids, and got a job as a freelance consultant." "And then you met me," Layla whispered. "And then I met you," Roman smiled, a genuine tender smile. "You dropped your groceries in the rain outside that bodega on 34th Street. I helped you pick them up. You didn't look at my watch. You didn't check my shoes. You just thanked me and offered to buy me a coffee because you felt bad I got wet." Layla remembered that day. She remembered thinking he was the handsomest man she'd ever seen, with sad eyes that needed cheering up. "That coffee was the best hour of my life," Roman said. "You talked about your dreams, your love for writing, your annoyance with your boss. You were real. You had no idea who I was, and you treated me with more kindness than people who had known me for decades. I fell in love with you before the cup was empty. But the money," Layla shook her head. "When we couldn't pay the electric bill that one winter, you let us sit in the dark with candles. You had billions, Roman." "Why?" "Because I needed to know it was real," Roman pleaded. "I needed to know that you would stick by me when things were hard. I needed to know you weren't just another Beatrice. And when we sat in the dark, you didn't blame me. You made jokes. You made shadow puppets on the wall. You made it an adventure. He took her hand, kissing the knuckles. That night, I knew I would marry you. I knew I would give you the world eventually. But I was so afraid that if I told you the truth, the magic would break. I was afraid you'd start looking at me the way Henri looked at me downstairs, with fear. Or expectation. Layla looked at him. She saw the vulnerability in his eyes. He wasn't a manipulator. He was a man traumatized by a life of transaction, desperate for authentic connection. I wouldn't have cared about the money, Layla said softly. But the lying, that hurts, Roman. I know, he said, and I plan to tell you, soon. But then the gala happened. When I saw how they treated you, how Grant spoke to you, I couldn't play the pauper anymore. I couldn't let them hurt you. I had to put the crown back on. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. It wasn't the simple gold band he had given her when they got married at City Hall. I bought this 3 months ago, he said, opening it. Inside sat a diamond so large and flawless it seemed to generate its own light. It was a blue diamond, incredibly rare. I was waiting for our anniversary to reveal everything, to ask you to renew our vows as Roman and Layla Kincaid, but I'm asking you now. He got down on one knee on the plush rug. Layla, I am a billionaire. I own half this city. My life is complicated and messy and public, but I am still the man who makes your toast in the morning. I am still the man who loves you more than breath. Will you forgive me? Will you take this life, this crazy, impossible life, with me? Layla looked at the ring, then at Roman. She thought about the way he held her when she cried over a bad day at work. She thought about the way he defended her tonight, destroying his own anonymity to save her dignity. You're an idiot, she said, a tear rolling down her cheek. Roman flinched slightly. But, she continued, smiling through the tears, you're my idiot. And if you think I'm going to let you manage a billion-dollar empire without my help, you're crazy. She took the ring and slid it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Roman let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. He stood up and pulled her into a crushing kiss. For a moment, the world outside, the paparazzi, the ruined career of Grant Sterling, the shocked party guests, didn't exist. There was only them. But the world has a way of intruding. A sharp knock on the penthouse door broke their embrace. Come in, Roman barked, his demeanor instantly shifting back to the powerful CEO. The door opened, and a man in a dark grey suit walked in. He held a tablet and looked grim. Layla didn't recognize him, but Roman clearly did. Marcus, Roman said, nodding, you made good time. Sir, Marcus said, not looking at Layla, we have a problem. The purchase of the sterling debt, it triggered an alert. Your uncle knows you're back. Roman's face hardened. The tenderness vanished, replaced by a warrior's resolve. Let him know, Roman said. I'm not hiding anymore. There's more, Marcus said, hesitating. Your uncle didn't just see the transaction. He's challenged the acquisition. He's claiming you are mentally unfit to manage the trust because of your disappearance. He's frozen the assets, sir, including the accounts you used to buy the hotel. Layla gasped. What does that mean? Roman looked at her, his expression serious. It means, he said, that the war I walked away from 5 years ago just followed me home. And my uncle, he makes Grant Sterling look like a playful puppy. Layla stepped forward, grabbing Roman's hand. Then we fight him, she said, the fear in her chest replaced by a sudden surge of adrenaline. She looked at the ring on her finger, then at her husband. You said I was better than them. Let's prove it. Roman smiled, a dangerous, wolfish grin. Marcus, he said, get the legal team and call the press. If my uncle wants a show, we'll give him a blockbuster. The sun rose over Manhattan, but the mood inside the penthouse was anything but bright. The privacy Roman had hoped for was shattered before dawn. By 6 a.m., the street below the pier was choked with news vans. Helicopters buzzed overhead like angry hornets. Inside, the suite had been transformed into a command center. 3 lawyers sat at the dining table, surrounded by stacks of documents. Roman paced by the window, a phone pressed to his ear, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. Layla sat on the sofa, clutching a mug of coffee, watching the large television screen. The headline on the morning news was bright red and cruel. Prince and the Pauper. Is the Kincaid heir being manipulated? A reporter stood outside their apartment building in Queens, their sanctuary, pointing at the peeling paint on the front door. Sources close to the family say Roman Kincaid has been estranged for years, allegedly suffering from mental strain, the reporter chirped. Now, he resurfaces with a secret wife, a woman with zero financial standing, just as he attempts to liquidate family assets. His uncle, Victor Kincaid, has filed an emergency injunction to protect the estate. "They're calling me a gold digger," Layla said, her voice hollow. Roman hung up the phone and was at her side instantly. "They are reading a script my uncle wrote, Layla. Victor knows he can't beat me in court, so he's trying to destroy me in the court of public opinion. He wants to paint me as unstable, and you as a predator." "Victor," Layla tested the name, "tell me about him." "He's my father's younger brother," Roman said, his jaw tightening. "He's a man who thinks empathy is a business expense he can't afford. He's been running Kincaid Global as his personal piggy bank since I left. If I take control back, I'll audit the books. He's terrified of what I'll find." The door to the suite opened, and the assistant, the man Roman had called Marcus earlier, though his ID badge read Arthur, Roman's security team rotated frequently, stepped in. "Sir, Victor is here. He's demanding a meeting. He has the board chairman with him." Roman's eyes flashed. "Let them in." Moments later, Victor Kincaid strode into the room. He was a man in his 60s, tanned to the color of old leather, wearing a suit that cost more than Layla's childhood home. He didn't look at Roman, he looked directly at Layla. "So," Victor said, his voice smooth and oily, "this is the little lady causing all the trouble." "Careful, Victor," Roman warned, stepping between them. Victor chuckled, walking over to the buffet table and inspecting a croissant with disdain. "Roman, my boy, you look tired. Queens doesn't seem to agree with you. I'm doing you a favor, you know. Freezing the assets, stopping you from making a manic mistake." "Buying the sterling debt wasn't a mistake," Roman said. "It was a strategic acquisition. Grant Sterling's company has valuable land rights. I got them for pennies on the dollar." "It was a vendetta," Victor snapped, dropping the facade. "You caused a scene at the Gala. You humiliated a prominent family. The board is questioning your judgment. They think you're unhinged, living in poverty, hiding your identity. It's erratic behavior, Roman. We have grounds to invoke the competency clause." Layla watched them. She saw the dynamic clearly. Victor was a bully, used to crushing people with volume and confidence. Roman was a tactician, holding back, waiting for an opening. But Roman was fighting on Victor's turf, the old boys' club rules. Layla stood up. She set her coffee mug down with a loud clack. "You're losing the narrative, Victor," she said clearly. Victor blinked, looking at her as if a lamp had just spoken. "Excuse me?" Layla walked toward him. She wasn't wearing a gown anymore. She was wearing jeans and one of Roman's white button-down shirts, sleeves rolled up. She looked like a fighter. "You're playing the unstable heir card," Layla said, her marketing brain firing on all cylinders. "It's a classic play, but it's outdated. You're ignoring the market data." "Market data?" Victor scoffed. "I'm talking about billions of dollars, young lady, not selling soap." "It's all selling soap," Layla countered, her voice gaining strength. "You think the public sees a crazy heir? No. They see a billionaire who walked away from corruption to live a normal life. They see a man who fell in love with a regular woman. They see a fairy tale." She pulled out her phone and held it up. "Look at Twitter. Look at TikTok. The hashtag #JoshRealLifePrince is trending. They aren't mocking us, Victor. They're rooting for us. And they hate you." She scrolled to a video of Victor getting out of his limo, ignoring a beggar on the street. It had 2 million views. The caption read, "The uncle is the villain." "If you fight us," Layla said, stepping closer, "I won't let Roman fight you with lawyers alone. I'll fight you with the one thing you can't buy, authenticity. I will go on every talk show. I will start a YouTube channel. I will tell the world exactly how unstable Roman is, how he fixes the neighbor's sink, how he tips 50%, how he treats people with respect. And then I'll tell them about you." Victor's face turned a mottled red. He looked at Roman. "Control your wife." Roman smiled, leaning back against the wall, crossing his arms. He looked incredibly proud. I don't control her, Victor. I just try to keep up. This isn't over, Victor hissed. The board meets tomorrow at noon. If you can't prove your funds were independent of the trust, the purchase of the sterling debt is void, and you will be removed from the succession permanently. You'll be destitute, Roman. I'll make sure you can't even afford that rat trap in Queens. We'll be there, Roman said. Victor stormed out, his entourage scrambling to follow. When the door closed, Roman let out a long breath. He looked at Layla with awe. I've never seen anyone speak to him like that, not even my father. He's a bully, Layla shrugged, though her hands were shaking slightly. I've dealt with bullies my whole life. He thinks he's untouchable because he's rich. He forgets that the crowd is louder than the crown. Tomorrow is going to be a bloodbath, Roman said seriously. He wasn't lying about the competency clause. If the board votes against me, I lose access to the Kincaid Trust. That's billions. Gone. We don't need billions, Layla said, taking his hand. We need the truth. And maybe we need a little bit of drama. Drama, Roman raised an eyebrow. You said you bought the debt with your own money, Layla said. Does Victor know where that money came from? No, Roman grinned. He assumes I used the dividends from the trust that accumulated while I was away. He thinks he's frozen everything. Good, Layla smiled, a plan forming in her mind. Then let's let him think he's won, until the very last second. The headquarters of Kincaid Global was a monolith of glass and steel that pierced the sky of Lower Manhattan. The boardroom on the 80th floor was designed to intimidate. A massive table of black mahogany dominated the room, surrounded by 20 leather chairs. At noon, the room was full. The board of directors, 12 men and women who controlled the fate of the empire, sat in silence. Victor sat at the head of the table, looking like a king on his throne. Layla and Roman entered. Roman wore a sharp navy suit tailored to perfection. Layla wore a cream-colored pantsuit she had bought that morning. It was authoritative, sleek, and modern. She held her head high, ignoring the whispers. You're late, Victor said, checking his watch. Traffic, Roman said breezily, pulling out a chair for Layla before sitting down himself. The press is quite enthusiastic today. Let's get this over with, Victor said, signaling to the corporate secretary. We are here to review the motion to invoke the competency clause against Roman Valerius Kincaid and to void the unauthorized acquisition of the sterling debt. A lawyer stood up and began reading a list of offenses: living in a low-income neighborhood, working a menial job, concealing his identity, marrying without a prenuptial agreement. These are the actions of a man suffering from a breakdown, Victor interjected, looking sympathetically at the board. It is tragic. My nephew is clearly crying out for help. We cannot allow him to squander the company's resources on his episodes. Mr. Kincaid, the board chairman, a stern woman named Eleanor. Wait, Eleanor is forbidden. Let's call her Margaret. Margaret looked at Roman over her spectacles. Do you have a defense? Roman stood up. He didn't shout. He didn't pace. He simply buttoned his jacket. My uncle calls my life in Queens a breakdown, Roman began. I call it market research. While Victor was sitting in this tower, I was learning what real people need. I was learning how the economy actually works on the ground level. That is why I know that Kincaid Global is failing. Murmurs broke out around the table. Failing? Victor laughed. We posted record profits. You posted record revenue by slashing R&D and leveraging debt, Roman countered. The foundation is rotting. And the sterling acquisition? That wasn't a whim. It was a rescue mission. The land Sterling owns is crucial for our new renewable energy division, a division I plan to launch next month. You have no authority to launch anything, Victor slammed his hand on the table. You used trust funds to buy that debt. Those funds are frozen. The deal is void. Actually, Layla spoke up. All eyes turned to her. She stood up, placing a single folder on the table. She slid it toward Margaret. If you look at the transaction details, Layla said, her voice steady, you will see that the wire transfer did not come from the Kincaid Trust. It didn't come from any account associated with Kincaid Global. Margaret opened the folder. Her eyebrows shot up. The funds originated from Archon Ventures. Victor frowned. Archon? Who is Archon? Some shell company? Archon Ventures, Roman said, is a private equity firm founded 5 years ago. It specializes in tech startups and distressed assets. It has outperformed the S&P 500 by 200% for the last 4 years. So, Victor sneered, you borrowed money from them? No, Victor, Roman said softly, I am them. Silence descended on the room. Total, suffocating silence. When I left, Roman continued, I didn't just sit on a couch. I took my personal savings, money left to me by my mother, not the Kincaid estate, and I invested it. I built Archon from the ground up, under the name Valerius. Archon Ventures is now worth approximately 3 times the current market cap of Kincaid Global. Victor's face went white. He slumped back in his chair. The board members were looking at Roman with new eyes, not as a prodigal son, but as a titan. So, Roman said, leaning his hands on the table, I didn't use your money, Victor. I used mine. The sterling deal stands, and since Archon Ventures is now the majority shareholder of the bank that holds Kincaid Global's debt, Roman paused for effect. I am technically your boss. Layla watched the realization wash over the room. It wasn't just a victory, it was a massacre. Roman hadn't just returned to claim his inheritance, he had returned as a conqueror. Now, Roman said, his voice hard. I have a motion of my own. I move to remove Victor Kincaid from the board for gross mismanagement and breach of fiduciary duty. We have evidence that he has been funneling company funds into his personal offshore accounts. Layla pulled a second folder from her bag. The audit started this morning, she said. The receipts are all there. Victor stood up, knocking his chair over. You can't do this. I am the family patriarch. You're a thief, Roman said coldly. Security is waiting outside. As Victor was led out of the room, shouting threats that no one listened to, the board members stood up one by one and extended their hands to Roman. Welcome back, Mr. Kincaid, Margaret said respectfully. Roman shook her hand, then turned to Layla. He pulled her close, whispering in her ear. We did it. Not yet, Layla whispered back, checking her phone. The meeting was the easy part. Now we have to face the world. She showed him the screen. A live feed from outside the building showed thousands of people gathering. The story of the undercover billionaire had gone viral globally. They weren't just business leaders anymore. They were celebrities. Roman groaned. I hate cameras. Get used to it, Layla grinned, straightening his tie. Because I have a feeling our life is about to get very interesting. And Roman, one more thing. Yes? Grant Sterling is calling my phone, non-stop. Roman laughed. Let him ring. We have a gala to plan. Another one? Layla asked, horrified. No, Roman said, looking at her with deep affection. A real one. Our own. To celebrate the new era of Kincaid Global. And I know exactly who is going to organize it. Layla smiled. I charge a very high fee for consulting. I can afford it, Roman kissed her forehead. But as they turned to leave the boardroom, the elevator doors at the far end of the hall opened. A woman stepped out. She was tall, elegant, and had eyes that looked disturbingly like Roman's. She walked with a cane, tapping it rhythmically on the marble floor. Roman froze. His grip on Layla's hand tightened until it hurt. Roman, the woman said, her voice like cracked glass. You didn't think you could take the throne without asking the Queen Mother, did you? Mother? Roman whispered, the color draining from his face. I thought you were in Zurich, in a clinic. I made a miraculous recovery, she smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. And I hear you've married. The help. The woman standing by the elevator was a vision of icy perfection. Vivian Kincaid, the matriarch of the family, hadn't been seen in public for 3 years. Rumors said she was frail. The woman standing here looked as fragile as a diamond cutter. Mother, Roman said, his voice devoid of warmth, you're looking vibrant. And you are looking like a mechanic playing dress-up, Vivian replied, her eyes flicking dismissively over Roman's suit before landing on Layla. She stared at Layla for a long, uncomfortable moment, dissecting her. And this must be the secret. The little marketing girl from Queens. Tell me, dear, did you Google his net worth on the first date, or did you wait until the second? Layla felt Roman tense beside her, ready to snap, but she squeezed his hand. She stepped forward, meeting Vivian's gaze head-on. I didn't know his net worth until yesterday, Mrs. Kincaid, Layla said calmly. But I knew his worth as a man on the first day. That's something you seem to have trouble calculating. Vivian's eyebrows rose slightly. Spirited. I suppose that's charming in a mistress. It is tiresome in a wife. She turned back to Roman. The board may be impressed by your little stunt with Archon Ventures, Roman, but I am not. You have embarrassed this family. You have married beneath your station. I am the executor of your father's personal estate, the historic properties, the art collection, the Kincaid Foundation. I can make your life a social misery. I can ensure you are never invited to a gala in this city again. Roman laughed. It was a genuine, hearty laugh that echoed in the marble hallway. Do you really think I care about galas, mother? I just bought the bank that owns the venue. He stepped closer to her, his height towering over her. You spent my entire childhood worrying about appearances. You let father ignore me because he was busy. You let Victor steal because you didn't want a scandal. You chose the Kincaid name over your own son every single time. I did what was necessary to protect this family, Vivian snapped, her composure cracking. And now you bring this nobody into our inner circle? She is not a nobody, Roman said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. She is the only person in this world who loved me when I had nothing to offer but myself. She is the new Mrs. Kincaid. And you have a choice. He checked his watch. I control the company now. That means I control the dividends that fund your lifestyle in Zurich. I control the private jets. I control the upkeep on your precious estate in the Hamptons. Vivian went pale. You wouldn't. I would, Roman said. You can either accept Layla as the head of this family, treat her with the respect she deserves, and retire quietly to the south of France. Or I can cut you off, completely. You can see how far the name Kincaid gets you when the credit card is declined. Vivian stared at him. She looked at Layla, who stood tall and unafraid. She saw the shift in power. The boy she had manipulated was gone. The man in front of her was a king, and he had chosen his queen. Vivian swallowed hard. She smoothed her skirt, her hand trembling slightly. France is lovely this time of year, she said stiffly. I suppose I have been away too long. She pressed the button for the elevator. As the doors opened, she looked at Layla one last time. There was no warmth, but there was a begrudging acknowledgement, a nod of defeat. Good luck, my dear, Vivian said. You'll need it with him. He's as stubborn as his father. The doors closed, taking the last ghost of Roman's past with them. Roman let out a long sigh, his shoulders dropping inches. He turned to Layla, looking exhausted but free. Is everyone in your family this dramatic? Layla asked, raising an eyebrow. We're the Kincaids, Roman smirked, pulling her into his arms. We don't do subtle, but it's over. Victor is out. My mother is gone. The company is mine. Ours, Layla corrected him. Ours, he agreed. He kissed her, a deep, lingering kiss that made the stress of the last 24 hours melt away. So, Layla said, pulling back, we have $1 billion company to run, a PR nightmare to fix, and a husband who needs to learn that he can't just buy hotels when he gets mad. I promise to consult you on all future acquisitions, Roman teased. Shall we go facing the mob? He gestured toward the glass doors of the lobby where a sea of cameras and reporters waited. Layla took a deep breath. She thought about the girl who had cried in the bathroom at the gala just last night. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who had faced down billionaires and won. Let's go, Layla said. They walked out of the building hand in hand. As the flashbulbs erupted like a thunderstorm, blinding and chaotic, Roman didn't let go. He waved to the crowd, not with the arrogance of a prince, but with the pride of a man who had won the only prize that mattered. The headlines the next day wouldn't talk about the scandal. They wouldn't talk about the debt or the lawsuits. The cover of the New York Times featured a single photo, Roman and Layla on the steps, looking at each other while the world watched. The headline simply read, "The King and His Queen." For Layla, the girl from Queens who wore thrifted dresses, it was the start of a new story. A story where the underdog didn't just survive, she ruled. And that is the incredible story of how Layla and Roman turned a night of humiliation into a lifetime of triumph. It shows us that true worth isn't written on a price tag or stitched into a designer label. The people who mocked Layla for her thrifted dress ended up losing everything, while the man they called a nobody held the keys to their kingdom all along. It's a powerful reminder that you should never judge a book by its cover, and you should definitely be careful who you insult, because karma has a funny way of balancing the books. What do you think? Would you have forgiven Roman for keeping such a massive secret for 2 years? Or was the lie too big to forgive? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and romance, please hit that like button, share this video with a friend who loves a good drama, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.